So welcome to the new and improved Ultra Running Sam podcast. You may have noticed we've changed our name from Understanding Ultra to the Ultra Running Sam podcast. So just quickly to explain why. As time moves forward, I'm creating more content with different things like reviews of gear on YouTube. I'm doing race reviews, race reports, and even some documentary filming at the moment, which will come out in the next few months. So the one-stop shop I want ultrarunningsam.com to be. So my website, everything's going to be on there. So it seemed fitting to change the podcast name to Ultra Running Sam from Understanding Ultra. So there's your explanation. On with the show. Okay, so Damian Hall, welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
That's all right, no problem. I'm glad I got my own intro right, because I've only just this week decided to change the name of my podcast, which is confusing me. It was Understanding Ultra, and I've now decided to try and simplify my life and have not as many Instagram pages and just try and have one where I do everything and keep it all together. So we're back to using my own name and Ultra Running Sam. I think Ultra Running kind of tells you what you need, because Understanding Ultra, people might have been looking for like understanding ultrasounds and things like that. So may have confused a few people, possibly. But anyway, enough about me. Damian Hall. So you're an ultra trail runner, international superstar, mountain runner. You're a writer, an activist, and a tea addict. But how would you describe Damian Hall?
oh gosh, I don't know. A midlife crisis ultra runner and parent. Yeah, who likes a cup of tea? I suppose. Yeah. Well,
the same as me. Same as me. Yeah, we've just off recording. We discussed the fact that we probably drank in the same pub in Derby, the Blessington Carriage. Big shout out to the Bless, still going. Derby's number one student pub, possibly.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Yeah, many happy memories of mid-90s long nights out in Derby and seeing Britpop bands as well in various pubs and venues there. I especially remember an incredibly memorable Suede gig in about 97, 98. In the what's it called? The Assembly Rooms.
Yeah, I was going to say the Vic Inn, the Victoria Inn. That was the other place, where the tiny little, really narrow place with a stage at the end of outside, almost outside at the end. Tiny, narrow. Always had bands on. Always good for gigs.
Yeah. No, there was a decent scene in Derby itself as well, if I remember. But I'm guessing your vast audience hasn't necessarily tuned in for mid-90s Derby nostalgia, but it's too late. Too late.
We went there. Okay. So we briefly met at this year's spine race, but it feels like a million years ago, doesn't it? January 2022. So I was one of the unfortunate people having to have the responsibility of taping trackers onto people's bags, which people obviously love having a tracker on the bag after they've trained for a year without one, and it rubs them for the whole of the spine race and you get complaints. So I quickly grabbed you there and got a selfie with you, and then we met again very briefly coming into which one was it? Middleton, which is, it is Middleton, isn't it? Your favourite checkpoint? It is Middleton, isn't it?
Yeah, I do like Middleton. Yeah, I was coming in there. Must have been. It was definitely dark, wasn't it? But dark on the spine race doesn't narrow the time down, because it's nearly all dark. So it could have been anything from 9 or 10 at night, couldn't it? I don't think it wasn't crazy early in the morning, was it? But it was.
I think it was. It was after midnight. I think.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think so. No, or it may have been. It was not. I can't remember. That whole week, obviously it's worse for you, but you being a volunteer, it all blends into one as well. And then, so I'd got the job of, supposedly me and another guy, we were supposed to just be kind of guiding the runners into the checkpoint and making sure that they knew where they were going. But I kind of interpreted that into me being able to run on the course and run in with the runners as they came down. So I probably came and met you halfway up the, as you come off the trail and drop down into Middleton on that road. I think I was one of the ones that came and met you on there. And then I gave you some false information. So I think I told you that there were two hours behind. I think something like that. When in fact, actually, it was 4 hours. But you seemed to take it really well. Actually, I thought afterwards you could have been really, really angry about being misinformed about the information, because 4 hours down to 2 hours is, you start to get worried then, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it is funny on races. I think you've always got to take information with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But I didn't really know. Yeah, I was leading the race at the time. And I guess I hoped my lead was more than 2 hours by then, but I didn't think it was as much as 4. So, but I think you said something like, "Oh, you're doing really well. Your lead's at least 2 hours." And I remember thinking, "Oh, only 2 hours, drat." I thought I had 3 hours, but it wasn't. It didn't matter much in the end. But yeah, no. And for those who haven't done the race or been involved in the race, it's just an incredible experience, and it is, it's mostly the volunteers and who make it so special, like yourself, Sam, and but also just kind of strangers turn up on the route as well. Just ringing a cowbell in the middle of the night on a godforsaken bit of moorland, like in the middle of nowhere. And honestly, I can't tell you how much of a lift that gives you when you think that person's made the effort just to say hello, and they don't expect anything in return. And that happens all along the course. Less so as you get north, because it's just more remote, but that's probably when you need it the more, and those little gestures mean more. But yeah, it's a really special. That was my third spine race, although I didn't get to the end that time. But yeah, and I plan to go back in January again. I've still got a bit of a spine problem, but it's such a special event. I guess, is that, how did it feel from your side of things? It's fascinating working in the checkpoints, isn't it, and seeing runners come in.
It's great. It was it's embarrassingly, it's the first race that I'd ever volunteered for, and I thought, I've got hopes of doing it in the future and just checking bits of the route out. I've done the sprint, the baby version, and I thought I just want to get a bit more involved with the longer race to volunteer for the checkpoint, and it was great. Absolutely loved it. I wish I could have stayed, for 2 weeks. Though I don't think my wife and children would have appreciated me being away for 2 weeks. But yeah, it's just like the camaraderie between all of the guys and girls in the checkpoint. Everybody worked together as a team. You're just willing everybody on so much to do a good job, as well as then, that's even without the runners coming through, because we had hours and hours and hours just us lolling around in the checkpoint waiting. So as soon as you see that dot in the distance, or see the dot on the tracker, see how far away you are, and then coming out to try and look for your head torch, come in, and you see other head torches, and you're like, yeah, this is in, and then that head torch turns and goes in an opposite direction. You think, we're thinking, who's up there at this time of night with a head torch, other than somebody doing the spine? Why would you be up on the moor? But yeah, like you say, you've got people just turning up. And I think when you came through, there was at least sort of 2 or 3 guys that kind of came in with you across the top of the hill, and then just dispersed in different directions, like sort of without really even saying hello. I think they probably thought that we were like coming to check on them to make sure that they weren't helping you. Yeah,
I mean, that is one of those slightly grey areas with the race, where you're obviously not allowed pacers, but people do sort of turn up and run with you. And I do make an effort to say, look, guys, technically you're not meant to be running with me. And it was usually very short, but that's something about the race just attracts people. I don't know, just and this, it was the same for me when I first heard about the race, even though I was only following it online. You're just, I don't know, just the lunacy of it, I think, and just the idea that people are really pushing themselves beyond what they think might be capable, might be possible for them. It's just really attractive, isn't it? It's just, and you want to help those people as much as you can, and it's a wonderful little sort of I don't know, microcosm of the human spirit or something. That all these, you know, it applies a lot less to me and people at my end of the field because, you know, I have run the Pennine Way a few times. I can do it, whereas a lot of people in the race don't know if they can, you know, and who knows what the weather will be like, and who knows what mishaps are ahead of them. And it's just, yeah, it's a wonderful thing to try and do something you don't know you're capable of. It's yeah, a wonderful thing to try and to watch.
What keeps you coming back to the Spine race and to the Pennine Way full stop? Because you've got, you know, more or less like a, yeah, like you say, you've got a spine problem.
I think part of it is a few little things. I mean, there is a desperation to, I've been third there. There is a competitive sort of eagerness to do better than that. But there are loads of races I haven't won, so I could be doing any. There's something about the winter, the British winter, that I just find really exciting. Yeah, it's not the Arctic, is it? It's not even sort of, I don't know, it's not even sort of the French Alps. But there's something about a British winter which is just, I think you can easily underestimate it. You know, it's dark and it's wet and it's boggy. It's not very glamorous. It's not like when the weather clears, you see beautiful mountains with snow-tipped mountains. There's something sort of, I don't know, the bleakness and the wrongness of it. I'm not sure. There's just something about having a winter adventure. And yeah, the Spine, yeah, it is different every time. And there's something about winters here. There's almost not much else to do in winter. Yeah, you could do your own solo projects, but there aren't many other races on. And it's a great time to get out. You know, to an extent, if you gave me the choice between running in the middle of summer and running in the middle of the winter, I'd probably go winter. I love the extra kit. I love the fact, you know, sort of wrapping up and being against the elements. I love that slight survival sort of game you're playing. Yeah, there's just something about winter, British winter, that's just really exciting. And the Spine is the you know, the biggest challenge there is in the British winter, I think. And the sort of atmosphere and camaraderie that we mentioned as well, that you get each time as well, which is just wonderful.
Yeah, I know what you mean about the whole winter side of things. So I was speaking to somebody about this week, about getting, you know, now things are starting, the nights are drawing in slightly, it's starting to feel a bit colder. The wife is now insisted that the log burner goes on, and that's it. Once the seal is broken of the log burner, that's it. It's forever on until next April or whenever. So that's the burden. But sorting out kit for winter, just like getting, you know, opening the drawers and finding all the different layers and everything, and it always fills me with a little bit of joy for that day where you go out and you've got every single bit of kit on. Like, you've got every single layer on. You know, it's a day definitely for wearing gloves. You definitely got to have 2 base layers on the t-shirt. You've got to have your, you know, your different layers on and everything, the hats. And then one step better, you run in at night and you've got your head torch on as well. It's something a bit comforting about that, isn't there? You just feel, I don't know what it is, that just maybe in the summer you just feel a bit more exposed, just being in a t-shirt or a vest. You know, do you feel as comfortable? I know you were saying you'd rather do winter. Do you feel as comfortable doing summer races as you do winter races?
Just to backtrack a tiny bit, listening to you there, I mean, one of the elements I think is also that kind of self-reliance, having enough kit that you're okay for 24 hours, or you know, and on the Spine they do make you take a lot of kit. They make you take too much kit. You know, don't get me started on all of that, but
Linda's not listening, don't worry.
Some of it's over the top, but some of it's quite exciting, you know, carrying a sleeping bag and a bivy bag and even a sleeping mat, and you think, well, if the worst comes to the worst, I can just, you know, I'll be all right just kipping out for a few hours. That's quite exciting. But even on a big day out, you know, when you don't in the mountains, you know, just having the extra kit and thinking I'm fine, you know, I'm fine for 6 hours or 8 hours, carrying all the extra food. You know, I don't hate running in summer, but there's something special about that winter element. I feel kind of safer in a way battling those conditions than, I don't know, blazing heat and yeah, you're kind of the opposite, don't you? You need less kit and you need lots of water often, and you know, that's hard. That could be harder to find in theory. So yeah, I mean, I'm not anti-summer, but given the choice, I'd vote winter, I think.
Yeah, I had a bad experience at the summer sprint, Spine sprint last summer, where I underestimated, relying too much on, in the Facebook group saying there'll be certain places where you can get water, and relying on those too much, and running out of water, and then struggling, and then getting to a road crossing where I knew that there was, like a transport cafe where I could get a drink. Got there, and it's the first one you get to on the road. Is it on Snake Pass, or is it below there? I can't remember. But anyway, she ran out of water completely, and all she'd got was cans of dandelion and burdock. So I gratefully took the 2 cans of dandelion burdock and tried to drink one, and then tried to put the other one into my bladder in my bag, and I just knew that was kind of curtains for me by that point. Already dehydrated, I'd been without water for too long, and then I spent from mile 30 to 40, whatever it was, to the end, currently was, but basically about 15 miles of just throwing up, to just taking stuff on, thinking, oh, that settled me down, I'm okay now, and then throwing it up again. I got to the big cafe stop where she's got everything, and I had a cup of tea, in your honour, I had a cup of tea, sweet cup of tea, loads of milk, drank that, and I thought, that's absolutely settled my stomach. I feel absolutely golden now, perfect. And got all my kit together, and then set off again. Quarter of a mile down the trail, throw it up again. So yeah, by the time I got to the finish, I was like a shell of myself, and I was starting to talk to sheep along the stretch. When I start talking to sheep, I know that things have gone back themselves.
Oh, yikes. There you go. Yeah. Summer's tougher.
Summer is tougher, yeah. It's just, sometimes it can just take you by surprise, can't it? That's the thing.
Yeah.
It can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as your sort of running history then, how, I know some people may know your sort of backstory and how you got into ultra running, but you like myself, you got into ultra running in later years, in your 30s, and that was kind of the norm anyway, wasn't it, for a long time, getting into ultra running a bit later. But now there is a big wave of really young ultra runners now, isn't there? What's your, how did you sort of take an interest in get involved at the age you got into ultra running?
Well, it was a sort of spot of luck, really. I'd done my first, 11 years ago now, I did my first half marathon, just kind of signed up on a whim in Bath here, near where I live. And it's a big event here. And I just thought, what's all the fuss about? I'll give this a go, and just absolutely loved it. And was just straight away curious about, what does the marathon feel like? So the next year, 10 years ago, I did my first marathon. And I was a freelance journalist, so I was pestering a magazine to take a story about it, and the editor just called my bluff and said, "Okay, we want a running story from you, but not that one. We're going to send you on your first ultra marathon." So later that summer, I did my first ultra. I do think it was pretty inevitable I would have sort of headed that way. I definitely heard of them by then, partly through this magazine, Outdoor Fitness. But I didn't have any running friends. It's not like I sort of had friends doing it. I think if I had, as soon as that would have happened, I would have been like, right, I want to try this too. Because I was just, once I realized you could run in the hills, and on trails, growing up, I didn't realize people did that. I don't live in a fell running part of the world. I'm in the Cotswolds. It's not really a thing you see. It wasn't then. But I'm lucky to have traveled the world a lot, and I love trekking, multi-day hiking, which is pretty much the same as ultra running. It's just in ultra running, you jog the flats and the downs, really, but it's the same idea. You got a pack on, and there may be some navigation, and you got to eat a bunch, and it's going to hurt a bit, but it's going to feel amazing. And so when I realized you could have big days out in the hills, just like trekking, but you might be done in half the time, you cover the distance in half the time, I was like, this is for me, this is my thing. So definitely at the finish line of that first ultra, I was like, this is definitely my thing, you know, even though it was pretty uncomfortable, of course, but I straight away was keen. So the next year I was doing my first 100K and first 100 miles the next year. I was just, and then jumping into the spine race. So I was really, just insatiable, really. Sort of every time I went up a distance, could I go up another distance? I was just, insatiable.
It seems to be a bit of a, do you think that's a kind of a personality trait that attracts that type of person to ultra running? The fact that, I speak to a lot of ultra runners and we all seem pretty much the same, that we want to get a taste for a distance, we'll do that, and then we're curious about the next distance above that, and then it's thinking about the possibilities of something else. Do you think that's just like the type of, type A personality that's attracted to this sport?
I think it's the word I see or identify with or see the most is probably that sort of slightly obsessive nature in people. I'm trying to think of friends who are ultra runners who don't show an element of that, and I don't know if I can think of one. I mean, certainly, we've probably all heard stories of sort of I suppose people with addiction problems who have kind of swapped, even if it's something fairly benign like smoking or drinking, like they've sort of swapped that for ultra running, and have just gone all in. And probably that's just something about the weirdly tribal way people get about diets in ultra running is sort of probably associated with the fact we, a lot of us sort of just go all in. So it's a curious one, isn't it? I wonder what it is, but there's something there about because I looked at my life a bit and realized I hadn't realized until my sister said something actually a while ago. She said something like, that's not like you to get obsessed with something, and I hadn't really thought of it. I hadn't really been thinking, but then I look back and I kind of think, well, I was obsessed with, I suppose, football for 20 years, and then it sort of pretty much switched to running, and I haven't barely play football now, but and then I realized that I listen to pretty much the same band every single day and have almost the identical breakfast every day. So those sorts of things. I don't know how healthy all that is and how many people would say similar, but I've definitely got several friends who are very similar in that respect. So hopefully that's vaguely healthy, but who knows?
Yeah, well, I suppose swapping an unhealthy addiction for a healthier addiction, not that ultra running is ultimately healthy for us, I suppose is better. I've got a saying that I've developed over the years that where I say I'm not saying that I'm all or nothing, but I'm all or nothing because I've kind of realised that if I want to do something, I will do it 100%, and if I don't want to do it, I won't do it. And there's kind of no middle ground with me. I'm like you say, I'm all in, and I think that's probably. Yeah, well, I suppose you've got to be all in with ultra running because you can't be half-hearted at it, can you? You get halfway through a 50 miler or a 100 miler, and your heart's got to be in it to be able to finish it, hasn't it?
Yes, no, definitely. You've got to be sort of invested. The longer the race, the more you've got to care. And that's probably more important than doing loads and loads of training. To be honest, we've probably both got friends who've done incredible things on pretty limited training, actually. So maybe sometimes they've got a few years of aerobic development behind them, but I was having a fascinating conversation on the way out to Tour de Gion actually just this week with some GB level runners, saying some of their best race results came after average of sort of 30 or 40 miles a week sometimes, which sounds bizarre compared to what some of us do, but and that's another appealing side of the sport, isn't it? That so much of it's the mental side.
Well, so just talking about Tour de Giants, how on reflection, how are you feeling about it now? So I know you at first it could have been quite easy to have been disappointed with the doing a gym Walmsley and
doing a gym. Yeah, I've forgotten. Yeah. Well, yeah, I've got to say I had a brilliant time, you know, and yeah, for those who weren't following, which is probably most people, it was all going very well. And on the last day, I was sort of fifth or sixth. I was getting mixed messages, but you know, I already said to my wife before, like, you know, top 10 would be fantastic. You know, top 20 would be pretty good. And I was fifth or sixth in my first go, and basically, yeah, it took a wrong turn. But I won't bore people with all the details. But yeah, I was with another runner, and he was really confident, and my watch was playing up. And he was Italian, he was local, so I sort of, yeah, I put too much trust in him. I should have trusted myself a bit more and been able to say, no, I don't think so, you know, let's backtrack. But yeah, we basically did an extra mountain. so it was kind of, I haven't doubled at least 3 hours, you know, sort of, yeah, getting up there, and then we lost each other up there, and then yeah, and then what do you do next? Are we up the right mountain or not, or do we need to get all the way down? And yeah, I had no navigation device, and you don't have maps in this race, so yeah, I mean, entirely my fault, but a comedy of errors. And then yeah, ended up finishing 14th, which, you know, isn't terrible, but it's a lot, you know, further behind than where I was. So yeah, there's some simmering frustration, but it just means, you know, that was my first time at it, and it's a really tough race. Everyone I saw was saying that was, you know, that was tougher than we thought it was going to be, myself included. Because it's like, for those who don't know, it's like the Spine, in that it's, you know, sort of 300 plus kilometers and single stage, so the clock's always ticking. But the terrain, you know, it's mountains, it's huge climbs, 2,000 meters, sometimes 3-hour climbs. So that, you know, so it's much slower than the Spine. Takes a lot more time, and it's pretty rocky. It's fairly technical in places, so it's, you know, it's really challenging. You're mostly going up and down mountains, whereas, you know, the Spine isn't quick by any means, because they make you carry all that kit, and it's usually can be pretty soft underfoot. But yeah, it's proper grueling, and I was getting more hallucinations than I'd get on the Spine. And also, the first time I got this sort of permanent deja vu feeling, which is absolutely horrible, and quite a few of us got it, and I'd not experienced it before. And you just have this constant feeling of, I've been here before, didn't like it last time either, I've been here before, oh, this is just like last time, oh, this is horrible, I've been here before. And I hadn't been there before. You know, I had wrecked some of the course, but not that bit. And I was honestly starting to think, and this goes on for, like, you know, a full 24 hours or more. And I was almost wondering if I could even make new memories anymore. I was beginning to think, am I stuck in this sort of twilight, sort of repetitive world where everywhere I go, I think I've been there already? And it was such a relief after the race when I said to a couple of people, did you get like this deja vu? And they're like, oh yeah, so bad. So a lot of us seem to get that, which was almost a relief. And
is that something specific to that race then, do you think? Or have you had that with other long? I haven't had it before, but I chatted to Sabrina Verger and Kim Collison, who both done a lot of adventure racing, and they were both quite familiar with it. So it's, yeah, not specific to that race, probably more specific about the amount of time on feet without sleep. But yeah, lots of hallucinations, but I was quite familiar with them, and they're quite, you sort of know they're happening, and they're not, you know, they're not usually sinister or wildly, they don't usually send you off route or anything. It's just little shapes and, you know, inflatables, or sort of inflatable sharks and Michelin men and stuff. But then you sort of really stare at them and they vanish, you know, they vanish. So it's not too troubling. But the deja vu thing was pretty weird, because I hadn't heard of it. So when I go back next year and get deja vu again, that will be really quite confusing, because I will have actually been there. So I don't know. That's going to properly mess my little mind up. Maybe it'll equal itself out, cancel each other out, and it'll just be normal.
Well, I hope so.
So what have you taken away from it then? What have you learned that you're going to go back with more prepared for next year then?
Yeah, I mean, it was, in a way, it was really encouraging that I could make a big Jim Walmsley error like that and still, you know, still be reasonably close to the top 10. I think I'd probably sleep a little bit more preemptively, and take the time to sit down and eat a bit more. So again, sort of preemptively thinking, well, there's a long night coming up, I'll sit and eat. I'll sit for another 10 minutes and eat. Probably those would be the two big things. And yeah, and try and run my own race a little bit more, and not pay too much attention to other people early on. But yeah, it's just stunning. I just can't wait to go. But the scenery is just immense, and the atmosphere is really lovely as well. The sort of local villages and valleys really embrace it and really get behind it. So it's everything I imagined, everything I've been sort of sold by people who've done it before. Yeah.
How does it compare to UTMB?
Oh, it's very different, really. Far more sort of natural feeling, far more. The terrain is much tougher, much bigger climbs, much more time at altitude, more technical. So the course is tougher, definitely. And then UTMB does feel very. I mean, it's a fairly manicured course, and UTMB is very. What's the word? I don't know. There's a lot of people on it nearly all the time now, which sometimes is lovely. But sometimes you want that peace, and Tour de Géant really gives you that sort of. You can go for a long time without seeing anyone, so you really get that more, that more feeling of remote adventure. But you've still got the checkpoints there if you're struggling. I would say it's pretty different, really. It's pretty different in most ways, actually. Yeah.
So I was following your guy who was Paul, who was crewing for you.
Oh yeah, Paul Booth. Yeah.
They're putting posts on quite regularly about your nutrition. How did you find that as far as your preparation nutrition wise? So what did you kind of have a rough idea of what to expect from UTMB days? Yeah.
So yeah. Interestingly, actually, Paul's a well-qualified sports nutritionist and a coaching client of mine, and just an all-round great guy, and used to edit the Feld Runner. Very good runner himself. So if anyone's interested in improving their nutrition, do look him up. I think on Twitter and Instagram it's I'm going to get this wrong now. I think it's sports.endurance. Oh damn, I might have to message you after. Ultra.endurance, I think. Anyway,
somewhere mountain.
Yes, I might go after that. But sorry.
I've got him booked in for a podcast next week to quiz him about nutrition.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, really good. Oh, great. Well, he's very enthusiastic. Yeah, so I guess it was a combination of his recommendations and what I've done in the past, what's worked for me, but also the limitations of sort of going to a new country. For example, I quite like a hummus sandwich. We couldn't find hummus anywhere. So you've got to, I think as an athlete, you've got to be quite relaxed. And if you've got, some things you're really specific about, you can't be too stressed if they're not available. So Paul had some great ideas about particular wraps and gnocchi and just high calorie carbohydrates or carbohydrate dense foods, which were really good. Pot noodles went down really well towards the end. Our problem was early on, it was pretty hot the first 2 days, and I wasn't really eating the stuff I said I would, and the stuff he prepared. And I would come in and he'd have an amazing array of things ready. And yeah, quite a bit of it wasn't appealing. But what we did, I suppose, concentrate on the liquid calories, lots of like fruit juice, cola, sort of chocolate milks. That tends to work for me, glugging in the calories. And he was very good actually, but at one point he had an ice pack, and I'd said to him, "Oh, don't bother, mate, don't go to the hassle," but he did anyway. And there was a point where he sort of cooled me down with an ice pack, and I could eat a bit more because he'd cooled me down. So that was his smart thinking again. And it was just, what else did he do? Yeah, he can give you secrets next week, but yeah, quite a few of the things I thought would work didn't work. But I think hopefully neither of us got too stressed about it until I got lost and didn't turn up for 2 or 3 hours. But he's very sort of patient and forgiving, and had lots of ideas. Chucked me some of his own nutrition when I wasn't really, for example, like early on, some really sweet gels. My idea was you know, when you're fueling at altitude, again, it's quite hard to get in. Rennie McGregor had said to me, you know, maybe stick some gels in a soft flask and sort of almost drink your gels, and that worked for, you know, early on, but after a while it was just too sickly, so my mouth was just, you know, I didn't want any of that stuff. So it's sort of how did we get around that? So yeah, I think what was great, he was calming, lots of ideas, very thoughtful, and yeah, he was always there, always ready. Apart from one time when I found him asleep, and I felt very bad waking him up because he'd been working incredibly hard, and I felt awful. You know, he probably only just dropped off. He'd probably been up all night, and I was like, "Hi, Paul." He's like, "Oh." But yeah, he would have a more accurate view. Like, he'll remember it better than I did, so he'll have a more accurate view of what happened. Yeah, it'd be interesting to listen.
I think you know, if somebody could come up with a way to counteract that thing that you get where you can't take the taste of sweet things like during an ultra, if you could find a way to reverse that, so that, I think you'd make a fortune, an absolute fortune. Anti-palate fatigue gel or something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing I do is, I was brushing my teeth most times I'd see him, or at least a swig of the mouthwash, which I think does help over time. And then, yeah, I was really enjoying in the refugios. I started really enjoying their pastas and their soups. I guess, yeah, salty stuff. And that's when the pot noodles became really appealing as well. So I would, yeah, a fail-safe for me normally is, like, I suppose, salty liquids, which is normally a soup or a pot noodle. But yeah, it's a problem. It's an issue, isn't it? And of course, I've got a sweet tooth, so I'm desperate to sort of get stuck into the sweet stuff, even though I know it's going to bite me, bite me in a bit. But
did you have to make any compromises on your vegan diet while you were there? Have you ever been in that kind of situation where you've had to accept something because there's nothing else on offer, or are you just always happy to go without or take whatever's there?
The truth is, I don't totally know. I'm not. Yeah, I'm pretty strict most of the time. And then I said to him, look, don't stress. So, for example, chocolate milk. You know, we hoped to find non-dairy chocolate milk, but Italy doesn't have as much vegan stuff as Britain. He went shopping a few times. I don't know. I said to him, look, don't stress on it. Like, it's more important that I get some calories in. You know, it's not the end of the world. I've got no allergies. You know, if I'm 98% vegan through the year or whatever, you know, that's good enough. I'm not going to stress on it. I don't care that much what other people think. So yeah, the chocolate milk may not have been vegan. I couldn't really tell. And there was some amazing cake at some point, which I think he maybe was donated by Sabrina Verge's crew, her husband Ben, possibly. It was some sort of custardy cake. And I didn't stop to say, is this vegan? He's just offered it to me, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm having that. So yeah, there may have been some compromises. You know, I don't think it's the end of the world. But yeah, because I must admit, my first big race when being vegan was UTMB 2019, and I did, yeah, got really depleted. I was trying to be, it's a long, complicated story, but yeah, I didn't have crew in all the places I needed them, and I probably didn't plan things as well as it should have, but I ended up really depleted because I was trying to be really careful, and it probably led to a DNF there, really. So this time I was sorry.
The big on the cheese and the ham there, aren't there?
Yeah, similar this race as well. Actually, I didn't have. Oh no, I did have bits of cheese. Actually, that reminds me, I did have some bits of cheese right up in the sort of mountain refugio huts. There were one or two that had almost nothing else. You know, middle of the night. So yeah, I did. I think twice I did have. Or they might just bring you out pasta and they've already sprinkled some cheese on top, sort of thing. But I'm not going to go, you know, take it back and scrape the cheese off. You know, I don't like to cause a fuss. So yeah, but there was one time I intentionally had cheese on my bread. I'll be honest, because there was not much else up there. So yeah, I definitely did. I did compromise, but
it's survival mode, don't it? You go into survival mode when you're in a big race like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you seen any? What are the benefits you've seen though in sort of in your training and lifestyle now that because you are very focused on, you know, that side of things, you know, the environment, doing your best as far as you can. I know you talked about being a hypocrite and everybody being a hypocrite when it comes to stuff like that. what are the sort of benefits that you found? Have you found that, you know, your training is better on a vegan diet, your recovery is better, anything like that? Is that, you know, have you noticed anything like that?
To be honest, no. It seems the same. I mean, I was never a massive meat eater anyway, but I definitely loved, you know, chicken and yeah, I suppose pizzas and dairy in general, you know, eggs and stuff. But no, I've noticed no difference really. And I do blood tests a couple of times a year just to make sure I'm kind of not missing anything obvious. And actually my blood markings have been better, marginally better than when I wasn't vegan, but not, you know, not spectacularly, not that you could say something had improved. But I've definitely got friends who think their recovery is much better. But if I'm honest, I couldn't honestly say that it's improved anything for me, if I'm totally honest. So I mean, I did it more in an ethical, you know, for ethical reasons rather than sort of performance. But I mean, the good thing is it doesn't seem to hinder things. You know, I would take wrong turns back before I was vegan in races, so I don't think that's hopefully not the reason.
So if you don't mind me asking, what are you 44? 46. How has your training altered over the years? Have you started to feel, I know that I'm 43 this year, and this year I've started to feel a little bit of being in my 40s with recovery and things like that. Is that something that's been on your mind, or have you just sort of ploughed through and every year seems the same? Or
no, I have noticed a couple of things, if I'm honest. One, I think is sort of like the day after a workout, sometimes I'm just more tired than I used to be. And at first I was a bit like, oh, I'm tired today, I can't work out. And then you think, well, I did a tempo run or a hard interval session the day before. It's just your body just takes a little bit longer to recover. The other thing, if I'm honest, it's getting harder to reach the sort of top speeds that I used to reach in training. I think, but yeah, I mean, I do more strength work. I mean, I drink very little alcohol. And I try, yeah, I mean, the thing with the vegan diet is trying to make sure you get the protein in, which as you get older is even more important. So there's probably a spell early on where I wasn't getting it in. I'm more conscious of it now, making more effort to, you know, get that scrambled tofu at lunch type stuff. So yeah, they're the two main things. And yeah, more strength, more sleep as well, probably. Like I find, yeah, I can't skip my sleep how I used to. So sleep has become, you know, a crucial bit of training, really. So yeah, those are the main things.
So for ones listening and watching that are sort of in our age bracket, what kind of advice can you give to them as far as things that you should have in place for and I don't want to say an aging athlete, for someone, you know, what do you think the things that you always make sure you've got in place to make sure you can keep doing your training?
Yeah, I would get on the strength work. I mean, some people seem to get away without any, but yeah, I mean, it's scientifically shown that as we age a bit, we're going to get a little bit of muscle sort of wastage. So, you know, that may lead to injury, you know. At least I don't want to find out. So I do strength work sort of 2 to 4 times a week, you know, with some weights. I would say that's a really important thing to bring in, and then being more conscious of protein. And also one protein mistake people make, I believe, is almost not much protein throughout the day, and then, you know, half a chicken at dinner. And actually you need to sort of try and spread your protein through the day, which is, you know, isn't as straightforward as, say, carbohydrates. But yeah, have a think about that. And yes, sleep more, I would say. And yeah, don't be afraid to go, I'm really tired, I'm going to bed early, or yeah, I factor stuff in. I say no to stuff, you know, if I'm going to be too tired. I think those are the things for now.
Yeah, I know what you mean about sleep. I get constant abuse from my wife, who is a night owl, and she will quite happily stay up till 11 o'clock, maybe half 11, 12, and
Oof.
she knows 10 o'clock that's me done.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not if I can get to bed before 10 o'clock, she'll be laughing at me and you know, and mocking me for being happy that I've, you know, that I've got this extra bit of sleep that I can get. But you need it, don't you? And I think, you know, I probably got away with, you know, burning the candle at both ends in my 20s and into my 30s, and now I feel like I'm not paying it back, but I feel like I'm quite happy to go to bed at 9:30, get an early night.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And yeah, sleep is nice. Sleep is good.
I love sleep, I really do. So just thinking about things coming up for you then. So tell me about the new book. You know, I read your last one, in it for the long run. I thought that was, you know, a great insight into how you sort of developed and got into, you know, your joy of running and how you got into that. But what's, you know, the new one? We can't run away from this. What can you tell me? Because it's not out yet. It's on pre-order at the moment?
Yeah, it's out very soon, early October. Thanks for mentioning both of those. Yeah, it's a lot it's a lot less fun. It's yeah, essentially it's about sort of climate emergency and running, and I hadn't figured really that the two were connected. You know, a few years ago, you'd see the polar bears, how they're running out of ice, and you'd think, well, that's sad, but it's got nothing to do with me really. But actually, you know, the running world has a surprisingly large footprint, ironically enough. And I guess the book was me looking into that, you know, from the prism of me as a runner. You know, what aspects are harmful to the planet, what could be better. And broadly speaking, it's kind of, for an individual runner, it's your travel, your diet, and your kit. Those are the three things to think about. But yeah, it's not all, I don't think, you know, only on individuals to sort things out. You know, corporations and governments can have so much more influence, but maybe we have to nudge them to improve. But yeah, it's a good look at all of that, and a good look at race. You know, races can have a huge carbon footprint, and brands, yeah, clothing brands and shoe brands can really improve. So it's a look at those sorts of things. Hopefully it's not quite as dull as that sounds, and I have thrown in some random sprinkling of climate change jokes, partly for my own sort of mental health, but hopefully as well for the readers to keep them from depression as well. But yeah, it's not all depressing. It ends on quite a hopeful note with a lot of the good things that are happening in running as well. I think so. Yeah.
What's your sort of involvement with, you know, with sponsors that you have? Do you have any input into how products are made, and any influence on that with your vested interest in that?
Yeah, I mean, I've found that side of things really fascinating, in that, you know, gradually building up the courage, I've, you know, sort of politely asked all my sponsors, you know, what's your take on sustainability? What are you doing to improve? And it's amazing sometimes. Some of the companies that you would think are doing nothing are doing loads, but they're not necessarily sort of, there's some discomfort, and I see it on an individual level, and some races as well who are doing good things. You know, there's some of us are nervous to share stuff, I suppose, in case we get criticized or called a hypocrite or get inconsistencies pointed out. So some brands are doing more than you'd think, and then often possibly it's the brands shouting about stuff that aren't probably doing as much as you think. I mean, most of my relationships with brands are fairly sort of, it's not that in depth, other than with Innovate, who I've got a long and good relationship with, and yeah, they're not perfect. They're definitely trying to improve, and I think they understand things, and I've had some good, you know, I've gained some knowledge from them, and hopefully I've shared some knowledge back the other way. And I think they're right. They're working on the right things. Some things take time, and some of the things that other brands are shouting about aren't that good, but it sounds good. So Innovate, I think, are doing the right thing. The number one thing they're doing is sort of aiming for durability. You know, making products that they hope will really last. And honestly, that is better than you know, a fancy shoe with some plastic from the ocean, allegedly from the ocean, or made of mushroom or sugarcane, like if that shoe doesn't last as long, it's totally counterproductive, because you need a new shoe and they need to make you a new shoe sooner. And that gets thrown away, that's waste. So a lot of that stuff is kind of greenwash, that kind of, hey, we've made a shoe from mushrooms. A shoe that's going to last longer is often better, even if it is made from fossil fuels. Unfortunately, like nearly all our kit is made from fossil fuels, which is, I hadn't really considered that. You know, that's quite upsetting when fossil fuels are the biggest problem. I mean, you could say, yeah, the overall percentage of fossil fuels that comes to make our kit is probably, you know, it's going to be less than 1% or something, but it's still, yeah, you'd rather it wasn't, wouldn't you? But plastic's very durable. So yeah, you could say plastic used in the right way is a good product in some respects, but yeah, we could be here all night debating that. But yeah, I do reevaluate my relationship with Innovate, but I'm pretty encouraged by what they're trying to do. And you know, I think they're honest with me. I know that puts me up for potentially being a hypocrite. I suppose I've made a real change. For anyone who follows me on Instagram, whatever, I really changed my behavior over the last few years. You know, I'm still an ambassador for them, but it's very rare that I'll say, hey, look, everyone, look at this product, you should buy it, because underpinning a lot of the climate emergency is overconsumption, overproduction, overconsumption. So I don't want to be part of something saying, you know, buy more, buy more, buy more. Ultimately, you know, running's a good thing, and you need some kit for running. And I think in some cases, you know, an Innovate shoe might be one of the better shoes for some people. But I'm not going to say you should all buy lots of Innovate or whatever brand, because that's not, yeah, one of the things we probably have to get away from is that idea of the new one, I need the new one, you know. But it's hard, you know, we're all human. We see a new product, don't we, and we think it might help us, or we just fancy it. So it's hard. It takes the brands can do more, you know. Yeah.
What can we do then on an individual runner level? Do you think it could be that we spend more money on more durable items of kit that we know will last us for years on it? I mean, shoes that do only have a certain shelf life, and I always extend mine massively over the top. It's probably why I'm always injured. But I'll try the maximum amount of miles out of shoes until literally my toes are poking out the end of them. I won't chuck them away, and even then, I've patched them up with that product called, is it Shoe Armor or something?
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah.
To patch up the holes. I've done that because
good stuff.
I've got an issue with, there's a condition I can't remember what it's called, but on my right foot, my big toe is always poking up and always making holes. I can't remember the name of it now. The guy from Trainer Armor did actually tell me what it was called, because I was really impressed with their product that I managed to salvage. So some very expensive carbon shoes that I brought, and they've got a hole that they hold them from my toe. And people were saying, "Oh, you should chuck them away." And I'm like, "Why would I chuck them away when I know that they've got more miles in them than the you know, the brand will tell you there's only a limited amount of miles in there." But I know from years and years of running that trainers last way longer than the brand will tell you to. So
100%, yeah. Well, yeah, there's a few things people can do, and it's fairly simple, I think. Really, it's kind of, I suppose, it's try and buy less kit and make it last longer. You know, try and consume less dairy and meat, and the big one is travel as well. So it's like, do you need to do as many races? You know, some people don't race much. Do you need to do as many races? And if you need to, then, you know, do you need to fly there? Is there a different, could you do it? Is there a lower carbon option? Often in Europe, trains are very, very good. So if you can reduce, you know, improve in those three areas. But I actually think the fourth area, and this is how sort of the green runners were formed, and I'd encourage people, I think the fourth area is to sort of speak up and be active, be an activist to an extent. But that might just be sharing information or ideas with friends, but it might be feeding back to brands or to races, you know, feeding back to brands and ask them, if you've got a favorite brand you use a lot, ask them what they're doing, you know, whether it's privately or publicly on social media. You know, be polite at first anyway, you know, and I think that could be more important than you know, repairing a shoe. It might be feeding back, and they've suddenly got, you know, hold on, our audience does really care about this. We need to do this properly. To me, that's probably more significant and more worthwhile, being a little bit activist. Yeah, to come and join the Green Runners, and there are several other organizations like that. Yeah, to me, those are the few things worth doing. Yeah.
Okay, so that's plenty for people to go at. So it's not just a case of, you know, I suppose you're, you know, as a runner who, you know, a top level runner going to international races, it's more difficult for you because those races are obviously, you know, the easiest way to get to an international race is to fly there, obviously. But when you've got, you know, but for us sort of run of the mill mid packers, and we're not going to international races or, you know, big European races, it's probably easier for us because we can just go and do, you know, I know that I can jump in my car and go and do one of Stu Westfield's races in the Peak District, Ranger Ultras, go and do one of them. And I know it's only sort of, I'm jumping in the van for an hour, or if I'm going to Ashbourne, it's like 15 minutes away from me. That is a lot different to going to UTMB or, you know, flying to the other side of the world to go to Western States, which I did do this year, but only to work on the media team.
Oh, wow.
But that was part of a round trip to go and visit my brother anyway, so I was going to do that.
No, that's great, actually. And that is, honestly, it comes from Mike Berners-Lee. Have I got his book here? Yeah, this is the book, if people want to get started on this sort of stuff. Mike Berners-Lee, who's an academic in Lancaster University, so by the lakes, he's a runner as well. That's the #1 book to start on. Yeah, I mean, one of his things is if you are going to fly, you know, make a trip of it. You know, can you turn it into a holiday as well? Exactly what you did. So that is genuinely seen as a valued thing to do. And yeah, look, listen, I don't want to be, I've done most of the big races I want to do, you know, and I did fly to most of them. And I'm not going to sit here and go, no one else should fly to these races anymore. So that's why I'm quite careful how I word it. I suppose I didn't realize when I used to fly to UTMB, I didn't realize that a train was only an hour or two longer. I didn't realize I could do that. So I do that now. I haven't flown for 3 years, but like, I can't promise I won't fly again. There are 2 or 3 things in America I'd love to do if I get the chance. But I would really value that flight now, and it would certainly be the only flight I did that year. And I would think of ways to, I mean, offsetting is a separate debate, and I so far I do offset everything, but I'm not totally comfortable with that. So yeah, I'd think up how to sort of, what's the word, balance that out. So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and sort of stand here rather and tell other people they can't fly because I've been flying until I sort of understood things better. So yeah, I think it's just, I quite like the phrase progress, not perfection, you know, and I don't think people should feel they can't do these big, important, you know, big, exciting races. It's just maybe thinking, well, I'm flying once that year. Can I really sort of, can I fly again? Is that really okay for me? And you know, it's up to the individual. I don't want to be too preachy there at all. Yeah, hopefully that sounds, I don't know, makes some sense and sounds fair.
Everyone's got to sort of evaluate their own reasoning on it, haven't they, and find their own place that they're comfortable, you know, being at. Yeah, I know. For me, it'd been years since I flew anywhere, just from pre-lockdown, and then having young kids, we couldn't afford to, you know, we used to go to Greece every year on a holiday, just when it was the 2 of us, and then kids came along and that went out the window for years on end. So me flying to North America once, I feel okay with that, knowing that I haven't been on a plane for a long time. So, and I suppose there's a lot of people in that situation as well, where they've, you know, through lockdown probably flew a lot for the work, and then that all suddenly stopped, and then they reevaluated their lives and realised how much they probably did not really think about travelling all over the world and catching planes not for no reason, but made them kind of reevaluate their situation and how it affects the world.
Yeah, totally. And we're not. No, we are part of the problem, but we're, you know, people in my and your category aren't the big problem. There's a 1% of super emitters, you know, with the sort of super yachts and the private jets. You know, they're ruining it for the rest of us. You know, and it's not fair. The amount of greenhouse gases they're emitting. In fact, it might be as much as double what the bottom 50% of the world are emitting. You know, and that just isn't fair. So a family that, you know, a runner that flies once a year, or a family that goes on holiday once a year and maybe flies, that they're not the problem really. So yeah, I don't think people should feel too guilty for existing. There are usually areas we can all improve on, but honestly, I think sort of activism or agitating for a bit of change with brands or governments, you know, email your MP. I'd say that's the #1 thing to do, actually. Or get involved in protests. That's more worthwhile, I think, than sort of washing up your hummus pots, which ultimately, you know, won't bring the big changes we need, unfortunately.
Yes, there's plenty that people can do to make positive change. So one of the things they can do is buy your new book that's coming out, and that's going to help them go in, you know, that organise their lives a bit more in that kind of respects. When does it officially come out?
I think it's the first week of October, which is pretty soon. Let me just maybe it's the 3rd. Maybe it's the 3rd of October. But you can pre-order it now. If you want pre-order it now, it goes straight. You know, the small publishers vertebrate benefit, whereas I think after that it goes to like Amazon or one of the big baddies. Well, I shouldn't say baddies because they're helping someone, but like if you pre-order it, then vertebrate get more of the money, and they're just a little good
company on there. Robbie Britton brought them to my attention. I spoke to him a few weeks ago, and he was saying how his book was through them. So I did a quick Google of them, and didn't realise they were only in Sheffield, aren't they? Just up the road, and they've got some great titles and great authors on the books.
Yeah, and in the last couple of years, they've made a real, you know, they've almost, they've made a real effort in the running world to really put out a lot of running books. But also with my previous book and with this, they analysed the whole process of the emissions from the ink, the paper, the printing, the delivery. You know, they analysed everything, and that possibly my last book was the world's first sort of carbon negative book. And they've done it again with this one to reanalyze again. You know, how could they improve? You know, how many free copies should they send out, or anything that might have an emission? So they really care about stuff, and that's not come from me. They just decided to do that. So they're a really wonderful little company. It's probably only, I don't know, 10 or 15 employees. Maybe they get angry with me if they're, I don't know, bigger or smaller than that. But I've been in there once, and they're just a lovely bunch. And yeah, formed in Sheffield and started off with climbing books, and then branched out into, I suppose, more hiking, running, mountain biking books. But they keep it to that sort of stuff. Actually, they keep to their niche. But they're a lovely bunch. So it's nice to support the little guys. Yeah,
brilliant. Right. So, well, everyone can keep their eye out for the book coming out in a couple of weeks and get a copy of it. Is there, you know, any? How do people get in contact with you if they want to get in touch about anything that you're working on or coaching? I know you still coach. Have you got any coaching spots available, people?
I'm very lucky. I've been pretty much fully subscribed all year. I'm very lucky, but I do operate as a short waiting list, and it is around now usually that a few people take a break after, you know, big summer races. Usually a few spots open up. But yeah, you probably Instagram's the easiest way to find me. I think I'm ultra_Damo. Yeah. You can drop me a message via there. I haven't had a website for about a year. It went down, and I haven't had time to make a new one, but I should get on with that at some point. Maybe now that book's done, I'll have time. But
you'll have reason to.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, appreciate you coming on, Damo. We're, very grateful for you sharing your time and sharing a bit of it. I know you're probably still tired from TDGA anyway. So.
I didn't think this was real. I thought you were a hallucination. I didn't think this.
Been here before.
Well, no, it's been a pleasure, Sam. Thank you for having me on. Been great to chat.
Thanks, Damo. Cheers.